Tonight, we've got three wonderful featured writers for you to hear and to spend some time with. We're going to hear from them directly in the first half of the show. We'll take a quick break, and then we are going to have a little chat with all of the readers, myself as the moderator. And it's going to be a good time tonight. So thank you all for being here. I also want to acknowledge the fact that we're here in Ajax, and we are situated on Indigenous territory of the Mississauga of Schoolog Island, and this is territory that's also shared, with the Anishinaabe, the Haudenosaunee, the Wendat peoples. So I just want to acknowledge the fact that we as Black people are settlers on this land, and we owe a great debt of gratitude to those generations who've come before to create a space where we can be together in community, and owe that great debt to the folks who are the original inhabitants of this land. So just wanted to start with that. And of course, the other thing that we do as a new tradition here at BlackLit Durham is that we start with the playing of Lift Every Voice and Sing, the Black national anthem.
Till earth and heaven ring with the harmonies of liberty. Let our rejoicing rise. Oh, listening skies, let it resound loud as the rolling sea. Sing a song full of the faith that the dark past has taught us. Sing a song full of the hope that the present has brought us, facing the rising sun. New day begun, let us march on.
So we're going to start the evening by inviting Thunderclaw Robinson to the stage. So Thunderclaw is a multifaceted storyteller and teacher, spent many years transforming negative emotions and energy into fuel for positive change. Hailing from Scarborough, big up. I know, nobody caught that. Scarborough's the best place in the world. What's the matter with y'all? Everybody's so quiet right now. He has shared the stage with Ari Lennox and Jesse Reyes, and opened up for the 44th President of the United States, some guy you might know, Barack Obama. Thunderclaw has traveled to a variety of locations across the continent to share light through poems and songs, and aims to use his experience to assist others in moving a step closer to telling their truest story through art. Ladies and gentlemen, please make some big BlackLit Durham noise for Thunderclaw Robinson.
It's been a minute since I wrote how I feel. It's gonna take a waterfall or something just to break this seal. I know you don't want it when a man get filled with emotion. Take stock on your life or you get swept away in the ocean. Don't take it for granted, I done promised I will be right back. Take it for granted. So longer than wanted just for me to step in my bag and I'm barely in it. Hit the freestyle and I'm just beginning. Make new money in the final inning. I was playing baseball while I warmed the engine trying to go somewhere, but where's the drive? Group is going so slow and it's time to fly, but everybody ain't grounded. Not everyone has done that yet. Everybody climbing their mountains easier than overcoming that. Like, what do you owe? Is it your friend or your foe? Use the arrow or the bow or both. Keep your frenemies and ends close. Watch out for those who for you boast. They do the most. Suck on your energy. I can see why you befriended me. I be positive and making. Spit a verse and have you smitten. Why he delivering written? The stuff sounds so bitten, but undeniably the original. I guess I'm bitter though. Type the narrative concluded nicely. You wanna try me? Been a minute since I felt how I wrote. I know nothing that is ever gonna break this flow. You can throw the demons at me while I'm ropes. That ain't nothing to me, gotta wash my toes. You know, you too caught up in their meanies. Some in the legion and try to feed me. Faced them before and they didn't see me. You down in an hour, I do this weekly. Only one of my kind in the human species. You be writing a poems I can do this freely. Uninhibited. Can't imagine figure out my derivatives. How do you mean? You don't know why no one likes it when your mask is down and you're faceless? Testimony, but your claims is baseless. Moms and pops, like who asked you to say this? Off the streets and put it on my playlist. Base subscription, I'ma need that. My own biases giving their feedback, cutting me slack. Been a minute since I wrote how I feel. It's gonna take a waterfall or something just to break this seal. I know you don't want to when a man get filled with emotion. Take stock on your life before you get swept away. My name is Thunderclaw Robinson.
Nice to meet you folks. I haven't been able to write poems because I just don't wear my heart on my sleeve like I used to. Now everyone who was introverted gone the extrovert route and they eating my food like it's couscous. I never meant to leave y'all hanging. The sound of a pandemic just wasn't banging. Everyone's slinging words but ain't no singing. I lost the feel for emotion. Maybe y'all didn't. I sure did. Mind state in the face of erosion. This is the soul in implosion. What happens when what is sustaining you on the inside is removed from its foundation? The balance is lost. Take that sentiment and expand it to cover the needy lives of every single nation, and what is the cost? Tell your manager we been in a whole pandemic, how they still gonna act like they the boss, like we don't got a virus running our money and messing with our healthcare. Enough to make Daddy Trudeau say give him some new welfare. Well, that's fair, at least if you're not on the brink. It's a stark contrast between basic needs being met and gasoline in your kitchen sink, so all your freedoms, respectfully, are afforded to you by your dividends. Or should I call them as they are, all of your privilege, blood money, sweat-soaked hours. It starts funny, you would think, you're working for your own best interest, but the whole time you're really funding your higher-ups bucket list on Pinterest. Oh, what about the carbon tax? That's facts. We are going to have to pay for our emissions someday. By the way, did you hear about the water spout touchdown, tornado storm warning last Sunday? Airport runways piled up with the carcasses of airships thick as a blanket because the atmosphere was too hot to support aerodynamics, and the bodies under that will eventually be greater. To us in our comfy homes, that's just statistics on paper. Only 4 million dead. Only 4 million? Do you know how insane we sound? How easily we take our own lives when genocide isn't around? Well, I promise you, mass catastrophe looks very different in person. You ain't gotta live it to know it. Everything gonna be perfectly fine. You can live your life without craving the drama from already being locked in the system, the economy's final form, and it's all downhill from here. I'm sorry to say it. It don't trickle down. It crashes. Some of you still have the wool over your eyes, and I'm not even playing. You are killing those of us who have been left behind even faster. Not with malicious intent, but through your very actions. In the end, You broke my mind. I knew that this would get there. Talk about taking breaks, but never let me get my self-care. I thought you did. Then again, I probably shouldn't have relied on someone who had my best interests at heart but couldn't feel what I feel on the inside, and neither could I. Not because I lacked empathy, but because we shared ourselves with each other and it led to so much jealousy. We were beyond the maturity needed to handle that. Just a little argument, enough to break the camel's back like sensitive floodgates. Be damned, messages written in the sand, swept away by the tide of time. Those little acts of kindness causing ripples in our ocean don't have much effect over waves of emotion. Catastrophic tropical supercell growing nominal into monsoons making landfall. Jump to conclusions and categories, typhoons and typos. Nothing comes close to the force of a storm or the feeling of peace when it's finally gone. If my head is lightning rod, that just makes me target practice when you play Thunder God. Your cold front pass over like the last plague, and I commune with you on your holy ground to my final days. Exhaustion blankets the soul like tempting, thankless sanctions. What's taking over despite all the vigorous actions? In a day, you can accomplish a million things, but the work is never finished. You blame yourself for endless goals, all of today's work diminished. At some point, you still gotta lie down in high town. You can skip breaks, but then you risk your own body breaking down. Our bodies, held hostage in its mortal form, seems infallible, and we still don't know enough about dreams. Rest is invaluable. Time is of the essence. Let me get my 40 winks off. Wake up in the afternoon rocking messy hair and flip-flops, and I still don't want to make myself breakfast. Unless I really have to. 3 meals a day versus hunter-gatherer style isn't very natural. It's past 2, and we still got to get this bread though. But none of this bread is going to get me affordable housing. The economy is deplorable. Backdoor, washroom wasting on company time. Why use the toilet at home for free when I can make a deposit online? Fake like I'm awake. Post the story a little late. Maybe I don't want to remind y'all to save the date because I know how you feel. 2020 was exhausting. 2021, I got it back, but many others ended up in coffins, and I'm one of the lucky ones. But there still wasn't enough sun to warm me up from the damage that the past winter had done, and I'm still so tired. With gluttonous breaths, recovering sets, I still don't feel activated. Well, I do, and I don't. It's a carousel of wills and won'ts, a merry-go-round of comatose. Oh, look, he's coming back around again. 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 I've been at half power for, ironically, the past year and a half. Always felt half-assed. Poetry felt half done, like I couldn't master up the other half the energy I needed to write something that would impress me. Of all the people I needed to please with my art, turns out I'm my harshest critic. Funny how I got so much to say, but not enough words for a solid review. The focus to do what I need to do better, lackluster, spine-bending, backbuster. If my writing style was as flexible as cheetah vertebrae, would I be able to keep writing long enough in my energy just to make it stay? Resilient enough to retain some semblance of my former self. Like what makes up me is me, but I still don't have my mama cells, like I changed somehow. Somewhere between worse and better. What the heck am I even doing if half of me is untethered, not even on this planet anymore? I left something in orbit from the last time I grounded myself from floating in the stratosphere and thunderstorming. Yeah, my ego stroking. And those who know me know I don't like that. So I casually cut off a couple kilos just to bring it right back, sick and tired of being heavy-minded. So much further from what I was to who I am today, I forget to give myself credit constantly. And we all should. Even though we fail ourselves every day, just remember that it's all good because that's what tomorrow's for. But hey, just remember, you don't know that it ain't promised. Don't stay slacking on the longest. Practice gonna make you the strongest, and it don't matter if you don't make it. We are children of creation. In the absence of your efforts, it leaves space for lamentation. Innovation be the mood. We gonna fix these problems soon. Tackling it all head on, that's the path to moving on, marching forward, taking over. We gon' erase all the borders, work till we die. That ain't landing, that's that filler, it ain't canon, and I don't care for additives. Natural, just like life gives. I just want that raw, organic revolution, make people panic. Gotta do some better, do some with the time that we are given. We are the youngest of our kind. And able-bodied, that's a privilege. Some of us just can't afford that. Or beyond the neurotypical. Some of us searching for love and never find it reciprocal, fighting for something greater. At this point, it's do or die. Doing something half-assed is better than doing nothing in my eyes again. One day at a time. Write a line, then another line. Till you remember the reason why you started on your grind. Pace yourself to what you know. Because you haven't stopped holding the light. You'll end up right where you want to be someday. And we gonna be alright. We gonna be alright. We gonna be alright. We gonna be alright. Can you hear me? Can you feel me? We gonna be alright. Chasing down planes on the runways of Grand Theft Auto with the fastest car just to never catch up. We did things like that all the time. It's not that we weren't good enough, it's just not in the design. Oh boy, here we go, a video game poem. But seriously, step inside a world with strict rules, limitations, and guidelines, and what do you expect to get if you let a cow jump over the moon? When was the last time you were challenged with making the real world your sandbox? To believe that you could achieve your dreams. Because if there's a place where anything can be possible, we should look no further than past ourselves. All the tools to make the tools to do what we are compelled to are already in our grasp. May inspiration and knowledge be the only true barriers. That's why I'd always allow cheat sheets in my classroom. There's no way to cook if the ingredients aren't tangibly in front of you. And as humans, all we ever do is reference something we're familiar with. Cross-checking facts and making Easter eggs out of bumblebees is alchemy. Whatever's lost can be gained in another way. Equivalent exchange. That's the way I like to see it. It took me my whole life to realize that the love I was giving other people still found its way back to me. I thought I was empty. Even I thought I was empty. The giver, one born with gifts, the gifter was this close to giving up. But I found out that love never dies. True love truly never dies. Like energy, it changes form and frequency and balances itself out across space and time in different spectrums. I found the love I gave my 6th grade crush that I never got back in a health pack behind the hospital in Vice City. I found the love I gave that most people weren't able to comprehend reciprocating while free falling with no parachute in San Andreas. I found healing from life's beatings in Dragon Ball episodes in the bars of Jay-Z. They said I was lazy. I knew my energy was elsewhere, doing work that would come back to me under the guise of self-care. I whip up my own medicines now. I call that free healthcare. I found the love I never knew I had for myself in writing these bars, explaining my life like I would if I could, because my whole life is a playground. And I tend to focus on the sandbox. I dig with bare hand and plastic spoon till I reached bedrock. I collected all the iron filings till I had enough to make katanas out of the melted ore. I let clay lay the foundation to my great days. I let the worms do their work because what's life without a little mess? What's a video game without some bugs? And I sift through every single grain of sand, knowing no two are alike. Trillions of different memories in one pit, and the knowledge that the combinations I can use to construct my future sandcastles are absolutely endless. Thank you.
One more time, everybody, for Thunderclaw Robinson. Start you off with a little spoken word, a little Kendrick quote in the middle there, you know, it's all good. How y'all doing so far? Let me ask that again. How y'all doing so far? Well, that's great. I'm very excited to be able to introduce our next poet, but just before, our next writer. But before I do that, I just want to also acknowledge the fact that we are in this amazing and beautiful space, the St. Francis Center. I don't know if any of you have not been here before, but it's a beautiful and incredible event space. They've been incredible partners to us in getting this show on. So just a word of appreciation for the good people here in the booth and in the back at St. Francis. Our next featured reader for the evening is Leland Harper. And he is a Canadian philosopher with a research focus on religion and race. Currently, he is focused on the connections between interpersonal and institutional racism and the terms we use to describe race-based situations. This is addressed in a recently co-authored text titled Racist, Not Racist, Anti-Racist, Language and the Dynamic Disaster of American Racism. He's an associate professor of philosophy at Siena Heights University and editor of the Philosophy of Race book series at Vernon Press. In his spare time, he operates Leland Harper Consulting, offering diversity, equity, and inclusion services to organizations across Canada. Let's give a warm welcome to Leland Harper. Warmer. Warmer. Still warmer. Make it hot. Walking to your people. All right.
So I am so far from a poet. I did write a poem, I think, in maybe first year university for my ex-girlfriend. I got a B+ on it, so that's as far as we're going with poetry. But yeah, thank you for having me, Greg, and thanks everybody for being here. I guess I'll start off with kind of a little bit about where this project came from. So as Greg said, I'm a philosopher, so I write academic stuff for the most part. But I've started kind of getting more into the general audience, and I think this is kind of getting into the more general audience genre, I guess, or not genre, but area. I don't know if y'all remember a few years ago, so this is probably going back to about 2018. There was a lot of talk about reparations for slavery going on down in the States, right? So Ta-Nehisi Coates, I think he was speaking at Congress or Senate or something. And you know how they do with politicians, and they kind of get them as they're coming out. So somebody grabbed Mitch McConnell. We know who Mitch McConnell is. Few people, the devil. This is basically a book written about why I don't like him, or why we don't like him. But I digress. So somebody said, hey, Coates was in there, said some stuff about reparations. What do you have to say about that? I don't have the direct quote, or I do it somewhere. I'm not going to flip through the book and try to find it. Oh no, maybe it's right here. Maybe. Let me see. No, maybe. No, that was my thoughts on it. I don't have it right here. But basically he said something along, to paraphrase, we fought a civil war over this. We've had a black president, so there's no more racism. We're good. That was my reaction, right? So does anybody here a philosopher? Didn't think so, right? But maybe Greg a little bit. So for those of you who don't know philosophers, we like to live in our own heads, right? So I kind of looked at this and I didn't know what to make of this comment that he just made, right? We had a black president, so there's no more racism. We're good. So, I sat there, I thought about it for a little while, took a bath, thought about it some more. Couldn't really, it was just stuck in my mind. Really, I was left with two options. Is he that racist or is he that stupid? Is one of those better than the other? Are they the same thing? Are they different? What's going on with these two options? Are there more options than this? So what do? I call up my friend or my colleague who I barely know. I just took her job. She moved on to a different university. I replaced her. I'd maybe talked to her once, so we kind of went on Facebook Messenger or something. Chatted. We just started talking about this, throwing out some ideas. And basically we came to the conclusion that situations kind of like this, that we can't quite categorize. That's where most of our race-based situations are going to be like in the world, right? So basically the process is we kind of talked about this, decided, hey, we'll write them down. We'll write our ideas down, right? So we wrote an essay about 15 pages long, but as we're kind of editing it down, we realized, hey, there's a lot of stuff that we wanted to say that we couldn't get into this 15 pages. So we wrote the essay, got it published, and then said, hey, let's go write a book. So that's what we did, basically. So to put it in a little bit of context, I'll just read a quick excerpt from the second chapter here. So it says, the semantic options with which we are equipped to classify race-based situations are, in many cases, limited to two: racist or not racist. Right? There's also anti-racist, but we're setting that aside for now, so it's a false trinary. But we're concerned with the stuff between racist and not racist. Well, to be sure, every situation that involves race needs to have, not every situation that involves race needs to have an explicit categorization attached to it. Each of us subconsciously categorizes it at some point. If we think nothing of the situation, then it's likely that we thought it was not a racist situation, and so it is, at the very least implicitly, categorized as not racist. Similarly, if we thought there was some heinous racially motivated unjust situation, then we categorize it as such, as racist. The problem arises when we acknowledge the fact that the majority of everyday, mundane, race-based situations do not fit so neatly into either of these two boxes. But since we only have two boxes, we must necessarily go, or they must necessarily go into one of these two. So perhaps an example may serve to best illustrate this point. So this is a fictitious example, but one that we can probably see as pretty realistic if we use our imagination or our memory a little bit. Suppose a young white family is preparing for a fun-filled Halloween evening. In their preparations, the 6-year-old daughter puts on her costume that her parents purchased for her at a local big box store, one which depicts rather poorly the ceremonial garb of a nondescript indigenous tribe. So I refer to this as like a bootleg Pocahontas costume. Upon putting on her costume, her parents promptly send her out with her group of friends and a neighborhood parent to go trick-or-treating. Now, if we focus our attention strictly on the costume-wearing daughter, what exactly are we to make of this situation? How are we to react and subsequently categorize it? Surely this is a race-based situation that we need to categorize. Given the two terms that are readily available to describe such a situation, racist and not racist, we may not be able to apply a term that sufficiently captures the complexity of the situation. This situation of a 6-year-old white girl wearing a cheaply made, mass-produced indigenous garb costume does not appear to be not racist. There's clearly something racially unsettling going on here, but most of us would likely refrain from calling this situation racist as well. This is, after all, just a young girl who put on a costume that her parents bought her and went out to go trick-or-treating with her friends. What this ultimately is, we argue, is a race-based situation that clearly is not racist, but that does not seem to pass the threshold for being considered racist. This is an example of a race-based situation that falls within the gray area of this racist, not racist spectrum. So the idea here is that if we don't categorize something as racist, because we don't have the semantic tools to actually capture it with something, we're just going to be quiet about it. If we're quiet about it, then we have the idea that there's no problem, right? That's the idea that's put out there. If I don't say anything, there's no problem. If there's no problem, we can't fix it, right? This kind of goes back to a little bit of the way Kimberly Crenshaw talks, right? When she talks about intersectionality. If we can't name the problem, we can't fix the problem. And right now we have a whole lot of problems that we can't name, right? So that's what we're trying to get at, this issue, right? And so we kind of borrow this idea of, it actually comes from the literature on sexual assault, sexual harassment, right? We can have good sexual stuff, good kind of consensual, we're married, we want to do what we want to do, we're consulting adults, we want to do what we want to do, or consenting adults, we want to do what we want to do. And then there's stuff all the way on the other side. I'm trying to be conscious of my language because there's children here, right? There's stuff that we have all the way on the other side. Most stuff is probably in the middle, right? It's not 100% good. It's not, you're going to get locked up in jail bad. It's, maybe there's a little bit of societal pressure because women make 70% of what men make. Maybe there's a little bit of societal pressure because, you know, so-and-so spent $300 on the date, so I got to do something now to make it up for them, right? All these little underlying things. So it's not 100% consensual, but we're certainly not going to say someone needs to go to jail for some sort of sexual assault type thing, right? So one of the terms that came up to fill in that gray area is sexual harassment, right? We can talk about that at work. We can think about 50, 60 years ago, a bunch of women in the office, go to their job, you know, Greg's being kind of creepy. Okay, what am I supposed to do with that as a manager? What am I supposed to discipline Greg for being creepy? Maybe. I see a head nodding. Yeah. Right? I can't put creepy into policy, right? It's not actionable, right? Now that we get this term of sexual harassment, now we know what it is. We can have collective discussions about what it is. We've named it. Now we can work to stop it, right? That gray area isn't a gray area anymore. We know exactly what it is. We can go further. We get sexual assault. We have different degrees of sexual assault, all those kind of things, right? Is it going to capture everything perfectly? No, but it's certainly a step forward from what it was before. And so we have found that the same type thing is happening in this race situation. There's racist, not racist, and anti-racist. And most of the things aren't going to be so egregious as to fit into being super racist or just having no racial context whatsoever or be explicitly anti-racist, right? And so when we think about this idea of the little girl who has her costume on, right? As soon as I say that example, I saw this. This book came out just before Halloween, this past Halloween. I called my co-author. I have a daughter who's in grade 1. I'll be damned if I saw the exact same thing I wrote about coming out from her class, right? I had to call my friend and be like, I just saw the thing from chapter 2, right? It's something that you can imagine, but it's funny when it just comes out and it's just right there. And I'm looking at the kid, I'm looking at the mom. Something's not right here. But am I trying to run up to the kid and call the kid racist? Probably not. Right? There's probably good arguments for why you might want to, but I think you can also see there's probably good arguments for why I wouldn't want to do that. It's a 5-year-old kid. What do they know? Right? 5-year-old kids know a lot more than you think if you don't have children or if you haven't been around 5-year-olds. But still, I'm not going to make them morally blameworthy or hold them morally blameworthy. At the same time, what am I going to do with the mother? How do I talk to the mother? Do I address the mother? Do I go up to her? Do I call her racist? Do I call her out? Do I call her in? How do I classify this situation? I didn't say anything. I'm just there waiting to pick up my kid. So it's one of those situations where I didn't say anything, so I've at least acted like there's not a problem, therefore nothing needs to be corrected. Right? So that's what we're trying to get at, naming and fixing. Right? So we go off on this entire thing where we talk about distinguishing between moral and epistemic culpability. So this idea of, should you know better? Right? What's reasonable for us to expect other folks to know? Right? So we can contrast this idea, this hypothetical but or fictitious but realistic example with another example. This happened in Kelowna. There was a man, he had a Halloween display, and among the display, he had a big Confederate flag and like a life-size, like black person basically, hanging from a noose in the tree. My friend from high school is the one that saw this, right, in Kelowna. So this was in 2021, that Halloween. Okay. We don't know this guy. We probably have our initial thoughts just from the people who are in this room. I know probably what you're thinking. right? But let's give this guy the benefit of the doubt, right? Let's say this guy just doesn't know what he's doing. He's a well-meaning guy. Hey, you screwed up, right? Let's go talk to him. My buddy goes and talks to him. Think he took it down? No. Right. My buddy's a black man, of course. Right. Goes up there and says, hey, this is hurtful to the community. This is problematic. You need to take this down. No. Police go by. No. Mayor goes by. No. CBC. No. National news story. I just like the colors, and the black guy hanging from the tree goes with my decor. Right? So, in the example, the first one that I gave, right, we could probably give this woman the benefit of the doubt. The mom say, hey, listen, that can be offensive to Indigenous people and other folks. Here's why. A reasonable response might be, oh, I'm so sorry, I didn't know. Like, let's go home, change out of this costume, we'll find something else. Right? Didn't mean to hurt anybody. Cool. We can argue about whether or not she should have known better to begin with, but, you know, you make the information available, then you see what they do. Right? So in that thing, it's a knowledge-based criticism. I'm not attacking her character. I'm not saying she's a bad person. Just, hey, here's something you didn't quite know. Right? So we may not want to call that person racist because typically racism is interpreted as a character-based insult or a character-based judgment. Right? And we're trying to draw away from that and create another term that attacks the knowledge component. So what we throw out there is racially insensitive, right? May or may not work as a term. That's fine. Placeholder, right? But we say racially insensitive. So now contrast that to the other guy. He has all the information he needs. He knows it's offensive. Why? Because people have gone and told him. Because it's been on the news, because the police have been to talk to him, because community members have been to talk to him, but he refuses to change his course of action. So at this point, it's not a knowledge thing anymore. Now it's a character thing. Now you're racist, right? That we can label, we could say as racist. Call him racist, call his actions racist. And one of the reasons we want to try to distinguish between that character base and that knowledge base is because, have we heard of this concept called white fragility? Few people. It's the idea that when white people are confronted with issues of race, they get immediately defensive, shut down, stop talking, and if we can't talk, then we can't really make things happen because white people hold all the power for pretty much everything in our society, right? So one of the ways we're trying to do this is to find a term to get around the character base and make it just a purely knowledge-based thing to say, hey, I know you didn't mean to do this, but here's something you may want to know, right? So for those of us who are around kids or who have kids, right? Think about how you speak to your children, right? I know you didn't mean to push your brother down the stairs, but maybe we shouldn't play up here, right? Little things like that. And there's literature from Robin DiAngelo. She's the one who coined white fragility. Her idea is that white folks are like children when it comes to race-based issues because they've had the luxury of going through their life being the norm, right? Their invisible whiteness, whereas folks like us have had to confront that every moment of our lives, for the most part. So really, it's just that white folks don't have the requisite experience to have these kind of conversations. And so this is one way of kind of softening the blow and maybe being able to get in around that, because we make the argument that it's better to be told that I don't know something than it is to be told that I'm a bad person, right? If I say, hey, you don't know something, what are you going to do? Go learn it. Go read a book, watch a documentary, talk to some people, whatever. We can fix that. We can figure out how to fix that, right? I'm an educator. That is my specific job, is to fix that, those knowledge gaps, right? If I tell you you're a bad person, how do we go about fixing that? I don't know if you all have answers, but I certainly don't, right? And even if I did have an answer, my assumption is, my hunch is that it's going to be a lot longer and harder than it is to just go read a book or watch a documentary, familiarize myself with some stuff. It's going to be a long process. So the idea is that we'd probably all rather be told, hey, you don't know something, right? And so we talk about this at the abstract sense, right? We're talking about language, but we talk about how language really makes a big difference in how we perceive, how we frame, how we see the world. Am I running out of time? Out of time? Okay. So give me one sec. So we bring it back, right, to this kind of concrete area, right? We move into a chapter where we talk specifically about the Black experience in COVID-19, right? If I say the way that the healthcare system addressed COVID-19 resulted in a disproportionate amount of Black and brown deaths in North America, what's my wife going to hear? She's a white healthcare worker. I'm not racist. Why are you calling me racist? I didn't. I didn't say anything about you. I just said there are some issues. And so we need to be able to facilitate some of these conversations to get at some of this really big systemic stuff. So we talk about it in terms of COVID-19, we talk about it in terms of other stuff, and we have a whole chapter that is literally, there's nothing in the chapter, it's chapter 5. It is just a list of all the unarmed Black people who have been killed by police in the States in the past 25 years. That's a chapter. Nothing else. No, this is what we're doing in this chapter. Just name, 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 name. Right? No context whatsoever. And so you kind of, people start reading it and they're like, what's going on here? And then they get to, Alton Sterling and Amadou Diallo and all that kind of stuff. And then like, oh, okay, something's going on here. All the way to a 3-year-old girl who was my colleague's niece, who was shot through a wall in her apartment building because they did a no-knock warrant on the neighbor. Right? So that's where we connect it to people are dying because we're not having the right kinds of conversations. Right? And so we frame it as the conversation is the first step. We can't move forward if we don't have the right kinds of conversations. Sorry, I know I'm over time, so I'll sit down, but thank you.
Wow, wow, wow. Keep it going for Leland Harper, everyone. Powerful, powerful stuff. I'm kind of shook by that last bit you said there. Like, legit shook by that. Leland's got a few books that are going to be available. So after our third reader, we're going to have everyone have an opportunity to go out into the lobby, talk, chat, get a drink, get some snacks, buy some crafts and stuff, pick up a copy of a book or two, so you'll be able to go see Maxine at the table and buy copies of AfriCANthology or copies of Leland's books. And then, and Channon will also have some books available a little bit later. So who's Channon, you ask? Well, Channon is let's just read right into the introduction, shall we? Interested in Black history and eradicating racism against the Black community from an early age. Shannon's keen interest and passion in these areas helps her develop a strong desire to educate others and raise awareness of the rich history of Black people. She has expanded her knowledge about Black history and the issues that the Black community faces both in Canada and abroad through her studies at the University of Toronto, University of Hull in the UK, George Brown College. Channon is currently a PhD candidate at Queen's. Okay, yeah. Everyone, please welcome Channon to the stage.
Thank you. I'm a little short. This is good. Thank you. No, yeah, you got it. Yeah. Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Good evening, everyone. Good to be here. Thank you so much for coming out on this rainy day and spending time listening to Leland and Thunderclaw and myself. Okay, just wanted to check that it's up. So yes, I'm doing my PhD and I do speaking presentations and I love PowerPoint, so hence why I have one. So I just want to talk to you a bit about today about my first children's chapter book titled The Time Travel Adventures of Ara, Harriet Tubman, and the Underground Railroad. So just a bit about myself. As Greg mentioned, I'm a PhD candidate at Queen's University. I went to the UK to do my master's degree and got my master's in slavery studies. And then University of Toronto was my undergraduate degree where I double majored in Caribbean studies and history. So as you can tell, the Black community is here. It's in my heart, not only because I'm a Black woman, but I feel like we always have to look back at our history to understand why things are the way they are, and really just try to do things better and be better so that we can have a better future. So it all ties into this book that I wrote. So I just want to tell you a bit about my book. So I released it almost a year ago. May 6, 2022 is when I released the book. And it's a children's chapter book. So it's not a traditional, 32-page chapter book, or sorry, storybook, children's kids book. But it has chapters, it has illustrations, and just a bit about the concept of the idea, and actually releasing it last year, May. So 4 years is what it took to really, think of the idea, write it, illustrations, everything, and get it out to the public. So it's a series. This is book one, and the concept behind it is Ara, who's actually my son. He's here tonight. He's just over there. I wrote this book for him. He's also the main character. And what happens is he travels back in time and he meets different Black historical figures, and he learns not only about Black history in whatever time he's in, he meets that Black historical person and learns a bit about their life and who they are, and just the Black community of whatever location he's in. So book one is Harriet Tubman. We all have heard of Harriet Tubman. Yes, show of hands, most of us. Yeah, okay, good. So, yes, Harriet Tubman, we know that she escaped enslavement. She made her way to Pennsylvania and then to St. Catharines. How many people knew that Harriet Tubman came to St. Catharines? Did we know that? And how many people knew that she lived there for close to 10 years? Yes. Okay. Greg knew that. Good. I'm glad. Yes. So Harriet Tubman lived in St. Catharines for, close to 10 years. And with this book, I chose her to be the first Black historical figure in the series of 5 books. And I just really wanted to highlight Black Canadian history. We hear a lot about African American history. We know our histories in the United States and Canada is very intertwined and connected. But I really wanted to focus on the over 400-year history that we have in this country. So I wanted to start off book one in a location that was right here in Canada, right here in Ontario. And, Ara goes on an adventure and he goes back in time to 1860 St. Catharines, and he meets Harriet Tubman, and he goes on a bit of an adventure with her and just learns a bit about her journey, and goes on this journey with her. So again, chapter book, I just wanted to make it different for kids. I didn't want it to be, there was so much info. Of course, I'm a historian, so I wanted to put all the info in here, hence the chapter book. And why I chose Harriet Tubman again as well, just her story, her journey, all that she went through to get her freedom and then to go back and help other people. And how many people knew Harriet Tubman went back a few times into the States, into enslavement, to help bring people to their freedom? So imagine you get your freedom, your God-given freedom, you take that back, but then you risk it all and go back several times to help different family members and different people who just wanted to be free and just wanted to live their lives as they should. So Harriet Tubman was the focus. I just really, again, wanted to highlight Black Canadian history, and that 400-year history that we have. If we go to the next slide. Again, so who was Harriet Tubman? I know most of us know who she is, but she escaped enslavement and made numerous rescue missions to help approximately 70 people. There's some debates about how many people she helped and how many missions. She escaped enslavement in 1849 using the Underground Railroad, which again, I'm sure we all know what the Underground Railroad was. For those who don't know, it wasn't really a railroad. It was just a series of routes and networks that enslaved Black people could take to make their way into freedom, whether it was in the northern United States and then after 1850 into Canada. So 1850, the Fugitive Slave Act was passed, and this act said that enslavers could come from the South, come to the northern United States, places like New York and Pennsylvania, where Black people could live freely, and literally kidnap them and sell them back into slavery. It also, if you were an enslaved person who, escaped and made your way to Pennsylvania, enslavers could come and take you back and sell you into slavery. So after this 1850 Fugitive Slave Act, there was this real threat against Black people to, maintain their freedom. And that's when more of them came into Ontario, specifically St. Catharines and Amherstburg, Windsor, Toronto, places like that. So Harriet Tubman married twice, didn't have any biological children of her own. She was a spy in the war. She was a laundress. She had her own boarding house in St. Catharines. She was a member of the Salem Church in St. Catharines. If you ever get to visit, please do. Just the history there and learning more about her life is amazing. So again, that's a bit about Harriet Tubman and why I chose her for this first book. Next slide. Go to the next one. Thank you. So, why I wrote this book for my two boys, again, who are here, Ara and Corday, Olua Corday and Arolua. So, Corday is 3, Ara is 6, soon to be 7. And I really wrote this book for them. They're my true inspiration. Early on, of course, with many of our, young kids, if we have young kids or grandkids or younger siblings, reading is a big thing, right? Reading is a big part of their journey. And my husband and I started with Ara and Corday at a young age to really read to them before bedtime and really, just let them be open to different books and the beauty of reading. So reading to them and just being in this whole world of history and Black history, I just started to realize that there weren't a lot of resources. It's gotten better over time, but there weren't a lot of resources and books out there for children, for students to really learn about Black Canadian history. And I know I keep emphasizing that, but it's so important because Black history is not taught in our schools. It's not mandated, unfortunately, in the curriculum. So I really wanted to create a resource where students, specifically Black students, could see themselves and be proud and be represented and just see it as a norm that they're on a book cover, but also for other students as well to learn more about Black history here in Canada. So they are my true inspirations. So really glad I just did that for them and just to leave a legacy for them as well. So as I mentioned, there'll be 5 books for Ara, and I'm also going to continue it on for Corday after. He'll get his own series. Once again, Ara goes to different locations. St. Catharines is the first place. The second book will be in Toronto. The third book will be somewhere else in Canada. And fourth and fifth book will highlight and teach Ara about his heritage. So my family's from Jamaica and my husband is from Nigeria. So Ara will learn not only about his heritage, but about the Black history in those locations as well. So just looking at the time, how are we doing for time? Okay, so again, it's a chapter book, but I'll just read a bit of it, if that's okay with everyone. I'll just read a couple pages. And please do come see me outside after, so, you could just flip through and everything. Okay, so chapter 1, On the Road to St. Catharines is the title. It's a surprisingly warm and sunny morning for the month of March. Ara drags his backpack out of the house and heaves it onto the back seat of the car. He pushes it so it will fit in the space between himself and his baby brother, Corday. Ara's mom looks at him as he pushes the backpack so hard it bumps Corday's car seat. Corday wiggles as mom straps him in. He cannot say many words yet. All of them sound like da-da, da-da, da-da. Aralua, she begins, and Ara knew that when she calls him by the long version of his name, she's going to say something very serious. Why do you look so unhappy? You'll have a great time with your grandparents. You always do. But you're leaving me for a whole week this time, and it's March break. All my friends get to go somewhere fun, and they get to be with their mom and dad. It's not fair, Ara whines. His friend Josh is going to the Bahamas, and Daniel is going to Florida. Where is he going? To his grandparents' house in St. Catharines, Ontario. It's going to be so boring, Ara says to himself. Mom reaches over and pats Ara's head. I promise you that you'll have a great time with Grandma Jane and Grandpa Peter. They will treat you like a little prince. They will spoil you. You'll see. Ara's not convinced. He straps himself into his seat. He is proud that he is old enough to sit without a booster seat now that he is 9 years old and in grade 4. All aboard, Dad calls out. Ara sits straight up in his seat and salutes. Yes, sir, Captain. Everyone is strapped into our space capsule on the good ship Oladele. Oladele is Ara's last name, which means wealth has come home. His dad has often reminded him to be very proud of it. Ara's dad and his family are from Nigeria. Ready for liftoff, Mom chimes in. Dad starts the car, and off they go. Ara's mom's last name used to be Brown. Grandpa's grandparents were enslaved people who escaped from Alabama on the Underground Railroad. Grandma's family's from Jamaica. Grandma and Grandpa's house is on the same one Ara's mom lived in when she was Ara's age. Ara unzips his bag and takes out his tablet. He mostly uses it to do homework, but before they left home, he asked his mom if she could download some of his favorite toy car videos from YouTube that he loves to watch. He pulls out some of his favorite comic books. Dad likes that Ara always makes sure that he has everything he needs in his backpack. It will take a couple of hours to drive from Toronto, where they live, to his grandparents' house in St. Catharines. Along the way, Ara's dad stops and buys coffee for himself and Ara's mom and a chocolate milk and a donut for Ara. Yum! While Ara is eating his donut and sipping his hot chocolate milk, he looks out the window at the car zipping along the highway beside them. Ara turns back to his tablet and watches his toy car YouTube videos. After what seems like such a long time, Ara feels the car slowing down. He looks out the window and sees the Salem Chapel British Methodist Episcopal BME Church. It is the church that his grandparents go and is not far from their house. They're close. A few minutes later, they pull into the driveway at Grandma and Grandpa's house. Both grandparents come out quickly to greet them. Ara jumps out of the car. Although Ara does not want to be at his grandparents' house for a whole week, he is still excited to see them. He hugs his grandma and then his grandpa. Hi, Grandma. Hi, Grandpa. How are you? How have you grown? Grandpa holds his hand out to the spot on his chest. You're this tall already? What are you feeding this boy? He asks Ara's mom. Mom laughs. She hands Corday to Grandma. Lots of stuff. You better have a full fridge because this boy eats a whole lot. Grandma bounces baby Corday up and down as he squeals and giggles, then hands him back to Mom and leads everyone inside. Well, I've been cooking up a storm, she says. As they go into the house, Ara smells the delicious aroma of familiar food. Grandma, something smells great. Do you need help? Yes, I do, Ara. Let's get cooking, she replies. As he carefully cuts the plantain, Ara adds, I sure hope there are some fun things to do around here and some kids my age. Oh, I'm sure you'll find something fun to do and make some new friends too, his grandma says. I hope so, says Ara, as he wipes his hands on his pants, even though he knows he's not supposed to. Then he starts to do his usual job. Grandma has already put the plates from the special cabinet on the table. Ara's job is to place the forks, knives, and spoons in the right spots. Lunch is ready, everyone, Grandma calls out. Everyone makes their way to the dining room table to enjoy a traditional Jamaican meal of rice and peas, jerk chicken, and plantain. It's the best. And that concludes chapter 1 of the time travel adventures of Ara. I'll leave it there for now. Thank you so much, everyone, for listening and for coming tonight.
Wow, I don't know, Shannon. After you say them things now, I'm hungry. I'm like, because my family is Jamaican too, and I'm listening to you, and I'm like, I know my mom can make all of that stuff. I know my grandma can make all of that stuff. I know my sister can make all of that stuff. I can make it too, but I prefer when they make it. You know what I mean? And besides, food always tastes better when somebody else makes it, right? That's what I'm saying. Speaking of food tasting better when other people make it, there are little snacks outside that you can pick up at the table that is being run by the Baker's Lab. There's also the table right beside them. There's all of these wonderful gift items that you can pick up from JM Culture Crafts. As you can also go and visit the table for the Ajax Library, where you can take a look at the different resources and what have you. So the Ajax Library is one of our main partners as well for this event, and super grateful to the folks at the Ajax Public Library for helping us to be able to put this event on for the community. So some noise for the Ajax Public Library. Let's show some love to APL. And of course, yes, please go and pick up books. Go and talk to Leland. Go talk to Channon about their books. Talk to Thunderclaw about his poetry. We're going to take a break now, and then when we come back, we'll continue the event, and we'll get into the conversation and discussion with our writers, and we'll have an opportunity to hear a little bit more about their perspectives and what they think about each other's stuff too. All right. So we'll see you back here in a few minutes. First of all, just before we get into the conversation, I just wanted to say that next show is happening on Sunday, the 11th of June. And at that particular show, it is the 1 year anniversary of this movement, to have this show here in Ajax, which we are, letting the world know is Canada's blackest town. Because when you go and you look at the census data, Ajax, Ontario has the highest Black population per capita of any municipality in the country.
Yes.
And people don't know that 1 out of every 6 residents in the town of Ajax is Black. And so that's why we're building a movement here. Because if we're going to build a movement for Black people, then we should do it in the blackest part of the country. And that's right here. So thank you all for being part of that movement. We're going to continue to do our thing. And, June 11th is going to be a great show. We got one of our features for that show is in the room right now. Ms. Judith Shah, birthday girl today, is going to be featuring, along with Abigail Grimes and the pretty provocative poet. So come through. It's going to be a good time. And at that show, we're hoping to have our merch. As you all saw me wearing this wonderful hoodie, we're going to have some other types of merchandise available. Make sure you grab something and help us celebrate. And I may even bring some AfriCANthology t-shirts too. We'll see. All right. So we had an opportunity to hear from all 3 of these wonderful artists. So just give them some more love one more time before we go. And so just wanted to take an opportunity to just get an opportunity to talk a little bit amongst the 4 of us. And so I guess the first thing that I was going to throw out to you folks is, you come into this room, you come into this space, you share your words with a receptive and interested and very chillaxed audience. So what's going through your mind as you're thinking about, this type of an environment where we are highlighting Black Canadian voices and gathering community around those voices? Like, how do you feel about that process, and why do you think that that's important?
Anyone?
You can go ahead, Jen.
Okay. It's beautiful. It's a beautiful thing. As a historian, just knowing a bit about the history of the Durham region and how white it has been historically, to come into a space like this, the beautiful St. Francis Center, to be surrounded by community and to be able to share about our poetry and our work and our research and the books that we've written. It's really empowering, and it's a beautiful thing. And I salute you for doing this initiative. And it just takes one person to come up with something and to run ahead and do it. So thanks for that, and thanks for this space where we can just come and be with our people and others as well. We're all community, and we get to share that with people. So
Amazing.
yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. I think for me, it's being an academic, I'm used to presenting in hostile environments, where people are just trying to tell me why I'm wrong for everything, right? That's what it is. Maybe some of you were thinking that, but you at least didn't voice it, so that's okay. But it's nice to have this kind of sense of community. And I think also just, I don't know if I can speak for these two, I can speak for myself. Writing it's an individual thing. Like, even though my personal book was co-authored, in this instance, for the most part, it's, I'm sitting at a desk or somewhere doing it by myself. So it's nice to connect with some other folks who are doing similar things, because that's just not a big part of my life right now, especially having two young kids, and I'm going to daycare and school and all that stuff. So I don't see adults that often. So this is cool for me.
Amazing.
Yeah, personally, it's been a while since I was even in the emotional space of like where I wrote these poems. So it's as much of a journey for me rediscovering everything that I'm like putting out there as much as it is for the audience. The audience is hearing this for the first time. It's been so long for me that I forgot what I was writing about. So we're embarking on this journey together, I guess.
Well, that's a really interesting thing to say, Thunderclaw, because yeah, it really is a journey. Like the process of creation and then either publishing or stepping on a stage to share work. It's an ongoing evolution. So I mean, I think as artists, I'd be curious to know sort of what is the biggest lesson that you've taken away from how you've developed your artistic practice and how you go about creating and sharing your work. Like, what's the biggest takeaway that you've been able to identify in that process so far? I'll start with Leland this time.
Yeah. I think I was actually just speaking about it with this. Sorry, I didn't get your name, this gentleman here. Gary, with Gary. Um, just do it. Like, it's just getting there and doing it. It's not gonna be perfect, right? I think um, I, as a student, or anybody really, I go out and I read books and I'm just like, oh, how do you write a book? This is so crazy. Like, this must be so hard. And I'm like, and yeah, it is hard work, but it's these people up on a pedestal. Um, I was just a dude with some ideas who decided to write them down. That's really all it was. And then, once you get into the publication process, at least in my experience, right, there's people that are there to help you along the way, and that kind of stuff. It's not, I need to sit down and write a New York Times bestseller just on my own in one shot. It's definitely a process, and just getting started, I think, is the important part.
Yeah, that's cool. Thunderclaw.
Yeah, a lot of the same sentiment of you got to start somewhere. Um, I've been learning a lot of like don't force it, but now that's a lot more conjoined with trying to handle navigating regular stuff as taking care of yourself or making sure that you're fed. Right now in my life, that's taking more precedence than allowing me the time to continue creating. But if I don't have that, I'm not going to be in the mental state of where I can create. So I said this at the last performance that we did too, but like take care of yourself, make sure that you are good yourself, and then you can get into that space of like this is where I would start writing down all my stuff and putting all my ideas together. But for sure, you got to start somewhere and allow yourself to be in that environment where you can start. Know what you need to fixate yourself into that environment where you feel the safest to start, and you're not thinking about, have I eaten yet? Or is there other stuff on the list that I have to take care of before I get to this?
Right.
Same. I echo the sentiments. Just start. Like my writing my book just started with a conversation with a coworker. She's like, Shannon, I see you writing a book. And, we were talking some more and the ideas just flowed. And I just started to write it down, just simple as that. But also that it's a journey, this whole thing, writing a book, it's definitely a journey. There's highs and lows. And I know for me, I had expectations of certain things. And sometimes those expectations weren't met or didn't look like how I thought it would look like, but you still press forward, you still keep going, and you know that if your book, if your writing affects one person, then that's the most important thing. At least that's how I look at it, right?
Yeah, it's cool. And I have one more question, and we'll open it up for folks if they have a couple of things they want to find out about as well. Uh, and I'll start with you, Thunderclaw, this time. I'm curious because all of you have done, multiple things where you've put out into the community. And I know that you're very heavily involved in, Black history in the province as well. And, you'd be in a whole bunch of different environments, sharing your work, having people read and comment. So I'm curious, like what is a really weird or shocking or odd or unusual kind of bit of feedback or interaction you've had when someone has, taken in something that you've shared?
Okay, strangest thing that's happened to me. I was performing at one of Dwayne Morgan's slams when he was still doing slams, like just before the pandemic. And there was someone in the audience, I guess they had seen his poetry before, poetry events and stuff like that. But that night, I didn't feel like going as hard. And I was just reading my work, and it was a brand new poem. And that lady came up to me afterwards, a white woman, and she was just like, "It's okay, you'll get as you just got to keep practicing. You'll get good someday." Essentially comparing my work to Dwayne Morgan's. And first of all, if you know who Dwayne Morgan is, you can't do that as easily. You can't just be like, "Oh, you'll be like him someday." That's
Nobody's gonna be like Dwayne.
yeah, no. But for me, it felt kind of not as genuine as someone who like should be just appreciating the poetry for what it is, and like them kind of thinking that, oh, that's the standard, so you should be trying to reach the standard, when poetry should be something more personal and something that's fluently coming out of you. Doesn't matter how good or bad or well put together it is, it's still something that is its own. But that's my experience.
For sure. Thank you, Jen.
Oh, I can't think of any. I mean, thankfully, knock on wood, wherever, with this book, the reception has been really good. I haven't had any weird or outlandish things that people have said, and I'm praying it stays that way. People have been receptive, but yeah, I don't have any, just good things so far.
Although I did see Leland, he was like, looks like he's got a story.
They're coming to mind, but I'm like, who's gonna trash a kid's book? Yeah. I guess once. So I do, as Greg mentioned, I do some consulting as well. So I was doing an anti-racism workshop, and I bring a lot of my research into these anti-racism workshops. So pertaining to what I talk about today, it was like, stuff about intercultural communication, just how to speak about what we see, that kind of stuff. I can't remember how exactly we got there, but we were talking about anti-Black racism. I made some comment of, anti-Black racism in Canada. To trace it back, we have to go back to the transatlantic slave trade and that kind of stuff. And some guy over in there, he's just, all I hear was, "Oh, here we go with the slave talk again." So he got fired during that workshop. But that was one of the weirdest things, I think. And then other just comments from students of mine who are just like, "Well, I treat everybody the same, so racism is not a thing anymore." And it's trying to, use that, not calling them an idiot, but also, because they're there to learn. That's what they're there for. If they're going to make that mistake, I want them to make that mistake in my class with me. So trying to get them to gently walk forward, or let usually in most cases the students check them, and it handles itself. But being able to address that, and so that comes up at least every couple months with a few students.
Dude truly lost his job that day.
Oh yeah, and it was a labor union, and so I had worked with this guy back when I was like 14 or 15. So he's one of these, been in the union for 40, 50 years, so he's invincible, right? Not that day. They were just like, we don't care. They were just like, we don't care how much we have to pay this guy. He doesn't work here anymore. So I'm like, see you, Ben. Catch you next time, bro.
Yeah, that's amazing. Oh my God. Let's open it up to folks here. Anybody want to make any comments or ask a question or have an observation or want to reflect on something they've heard tonight, it's okay. Don't be shy. If you don't want to, it's okay. But I'm sure somebody does. Anyone? I feel like Ferris Bueller's teacher. Anyone? Anyone?
I have a question. Can I ask a question?
Yeah, you can ask
I
a
have a
question.
question for Channon.
Okay.
This merging of kind of fiction and nonfiction, really. How? Like I just I'm like the least creative person, so the stuff that you folks do is mind-boggling to me. And I think it's just cool how you were able to take, the history and actually make it digestible for, I mean, that's one of the things we try to do is make stuff accessible to children, or to lay audiences or whatever it is. I wonder if you can maybe just talk, if you have any advice for how to do any of that.
Oh
It'd be
boy.
greatly helpful.
Well, so I mean, yes, thankfully I have the knowledge of the history. But okay, let me say this. I did have a bit of a tough time when I had to write it because I'm like, how much do I put in? I have to make it accessible for kids. I have to write it in such a way that they get the information, but it's still fun for them. The time travel bit, I love history. Like, I love it. So I was like, what would I like? I'd love to go back in time. So that's something cool. That's something fun. And, we see movies and books and things like that, and how it's just well received by people and kids. So I'm like, okay, what if we do that? What if we have a special um, thing that Aura has that gets him back in time? Easy to use him as a character. He's the perfect age to learn about our history and Black Canadian history and just Black history in general.
Right.
So that was a bit of a tough time to kind of really word it in a way that they'd understand. But hopefully, from what I've been hearing so far, I did justice to it. Yeah, but I had help, of course, along the way, and had to stop and write again and go back and get feedback and all of that. So yeah, I'm thankful that I was able to kind of merge the two. Yeah.
Cool.
Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Leland.
Mhm.
Mm.
That you're trying to. Mm.
Well, so I may have also stolen this tattoo a little bit from a dude. It's my great grandma's initials, so we stole it from Larry Hughes, who used to play for the Cavs. Thank you.
No, that's cool. Yes.
Oh. I self-published. Yeah, it's quite tough, but I'm I was of the mindset and I'm still of the mindset that we've all echoed today. Just start, just do it, right?
Mhm.
Amazon has made it easy. Ingram Spark has made it easy to get poetry, whatever it is, out there to people. Um, so not that I mean, being traditionally published would be wonderful, but I'm not waiting for it, so to speak. I'm just doing my thing. I'm just putting what I have to do, put it out there, and hopefully people will receive it and love it, and I keep moving forward, right? Yeah, if we can't wait for other people and the traditional publishers. No, no. We have the power to start and to do and to put our work out there. And again, if it affects just one person or it influences one person, I'm satisfied.
Do you mind if I jump in on this? So when I put out AfriCANthology last year, it was published by a small press. They're based in Gatineau, Quebec, in the Ottawa area. But before that, I had put out a book by another small press. I had self-published my own book that's available on Amazon, and I also did an assisted self-publishing through Friesen Press, which is another option that folks can do for one of my books. And then right now, I'm working on a manuscript that's going to be published by Dundurn Press, by a major publishing house. So I think I've published just about every way that you can publish. I think the key is to just understand what it is that you're looking to do. If you think you're going to be the next John Grisham or Danielle Steele or something, then you better hustle hard for that deal, right? But if you're thinking that you're just interested in getting information out, or getting a story out, or getting some poetry out, or getting a philosophy out, whatever that is, then ultimately it doesn't matter how you publish it. Like you could go down to the Kinko's and, and make a nice little cover and staple it together and sell it. It doesn't matter, like, I think about the American Revolution, Thomas Paine, they put out a pamphlet. It's one of the most famous publications in history. It's a pamphlet. So it doesn't really matter how you publish it. The key is to get it done and get it into other people's hands. And then once that happens, then the sky is the limit. Mm-hmm. That's what I think. And what do I know? I'm just a poor black man trying to make a living in a harsh, cruel city.
And you chose publishing?
No, right? Why am I a writer? Why am I a poet of all things? Good gracious. Yeah, speaking of poetry, Thunderclaw, I have a question for you.
Yes, sir.
Do you have ambitions of doing any other type of writing besides poetry? And being on stage and performing it, and why or why not? I'm kind of curious about this.
I'm glad you asked that because now I can expand more on. Well, I am a poet, but I also have been writing lyrically for a long time. I'm a rapper as well. I haven't performed any of my songs in a while because I was always writing to people's beats who were not owned by me. So for the past couple of years, I've been working on creating that kind of content myself. So that'll come. The music discography will come. In the meantime, I'm also working on writing a few books. So the first one will be a collection of all my best poetry from the past couple of years, along with some new like visual art directly out of my hands. I'm gonna put that into the book as well. So that's something that I'm anticipating. And then beyond that, I want to create a couple mangas. So for people who don't know what a manga is, it's a Japanese graphic novel. And I'm not a Japanese artist, but I want to illustrate it in that style because that's something that has inspired me through a lot of my life. So it would be written and drawn in that style. And it was something that I wanted to do because sometimes you'll see Black people in manga and anime, but you don't see them represented properly in the art style. So I wanted it to feel distinctly Japanese, but look Black, you know? So before I write the main story that I want to do, which will be like a couple years of writing and releasing volumes for that story, I want to create a one shot, which is like a smaller version of what I want to do, where I pre-plan the story. So that's my plan right now: the poetry book, the one shot, and then my overall like my long story manga.
It's amazing. So you start scratching below the surface and you see like how multi-talented folks are, how much they have to offer. And the fact that all of these folks are located here in this region, here in Durham, is really heartwarming. If anyone has any other comments, is there one more comment before we wrap up? Another question? Let me see. Anybody out there? Yes. Okay, go ahead.
Oof. Yeah, so we're working on the follow-up book to this one right now. So, this is kind of the, how we facilitate conversations about stuff, because that's going to be the first step in getting toward our refrain is justice more equally enjoyed by all. What if talking doesn't work? Right? So that's the next book we're writing. What happens if we have to burn it all to the ground? And so there's that. So that's one project I'm working on. Another project I'm working on is an edited anthology of original contributions about race and communication. So again, same type feel. So we talk about stuff like race-splaining, so it's like mansplaining, but race-splaining, what it means to be an actual disagreement, all sorts of stuff like that. And then I'm just starting another book, which will be exploring racism in the Canadian context. Because as you probably all know, we hear a lot about, oh, well, Canada's multicultural and blah, blah, blah. And my thing is, it's still racist. It's just a different kind of racism. And there's not very many, I mean, there's experts in it, but there's not very many academic book length treatments of what distinguishes or the parallels between Canadian racism and American racism. So my goal is to work on that. I've really only just started. I just started talking to a publisher about it maybe 4 months ago. So I know, right?
Let's get it going.
Follow me on Instagram. I don't know. But and the publication, even if I had it written today, you wouldn't get it for about 16, 18 months at the earliest. So I don't know. Keep Googling me every couple of years, maybe.
We'll bring you back.
Yeah.
Don't worry about it.
Yeah.
So folks, I think we've had an amazing evening, have we not? Incredible time. I want to thank Thunderclaw and Leland and Channon for being with us here this evening. I also, of course, want to send a shout out to our organizations who are partnered, obviously like AfriCANthology Canada, as well as the Ajax Public Library, the St. Francis Center, What's Your Story Author Services that are the main partners for this. I'm going to send a shout out to our Black businesses who are in the lobby, JM Couture Crafts and the Baker's Lab, as well as to the gentlemen who have been here working in the booth. I want to say thank you to you for all of your assistance on the AV. Thank you very much. And we got to send a shout out to Gary, who's been video recording all of this and making sure that we can tell the world about what's happening in Ajax. And once again, we'll be back here again Sunday, the 11th of June. Come through, bring your people. It will be nice, hopefully summerish weather. So we can all come and just, put on, I'm trying to put on my pretty shoe. I had like this nice white shoe I was going to put on for the show tonight. And it was too wet and muddy outside. So I said, dash that. But next time, maybe I'll even wear shorts. Who knows? But once again, thank you all for being here. Thank you for taking the time. Thank you for bringing yourselves, young and old, to be here. And again, my name is Greg Frankson, and I am privileged and pleased to be the artistic director and your host. Get home safely. Have a wonderful time getting back, and we'll see you next time.
You are the word of our beginning, one with God the Lord Most High. Your hidden glory.